Yang Yi gulped. I can right now? Yes. The divining flame said. Actually, there are no restrictions to enter the other levels in the pagoda. It's probably it that intentionally made those levels inaccessible to you. Yang Yi naturally understood who the it here was, so he asked, why? The divining flame answered, because your strength is insufficient. The pagoda contains many things that aren't from this world. They exceed the scope of this world, and they exceed the understanding of this world as well. You can't take control or master them without sufficient strength. Just like me. If your body hadn't grown strong to a certain extent, then you would definitely be obliterated from forcefully utilizing my strength. The divining flame paused for a moment and continued, understand? It isn't restricting you but protecting you. It's protecting me. Yang Yi fell silent. He didn't doubt the divining flame. Even though the primordial pagoda had never conversed with him, he couldn't deny that it had been always helping him. Meanwhile, the divining flame continued. It chose you as its master because it has no other choice. But now that it has happened, and you even obtained that person's acknowledgement, it will only help you and never harm you. However, you have to work hard on growing stronger. Because your current strength isn't sufficient to truly take control of it, and you can't help it as well. Yang Yi was puzzled. Help it? What do you mean? The divining flame fell silent for a long time before it said, it was heavily injured when Xiaoqi stole it, so it has no choice but to attach itself to you and rely on you to recover. I'm sure you've noticed that it's growing stronger as you do, right? Yang Yi nodded. Indeed, the primordial pagoda was just a tiny vortex in the beginning. Yet now, it could even suppress Zenith Realm experts. After all, those two blood puppets far surpassed ordinary Zenith Realm experts, but they'd been completely suppressed by the primordial pagoda. The divining flame said, didn't you want to access the next level? Close your eyes and sense it now. Sense it carefully. Yang Yi nodded, and then he closed his eyes slowly. Around 5 breaths of time later, he opened them slowly. I've found it. His figure vanished on the spot once he finished speaking. A breath of time later, Yang Yi appeared before a door, and there was a violet gold talisman stuck on the door. Yang Yi remained silent for a moment, and then he stretched his hand towards it. However, the talisman suddenly floated off the door and stopped in front of Yang Yi. Creak. The door before him creaked open slowly. Yang Yi didn't go in. He just gazed at the golden talisman in his grasp instead. Suddenly, an evil aura surged out from within. Yang Ye's expression immediately changed. He hurriedly put the talisman away and slammed his right fist forward. Boom! An explosion resounded, and then Yang Yi was blasted almost 10 kilometers away, and a wisp of blood immediately seeped out from the corner of his mouth once he stopped his figure. Yang Yi wiped off the blood and looked up at the door. There was only pitch-black darkness, and he couldn't see anything behind the door. Is someone in there? Or perhaps a demon beast? Yang Yi remained silent for a long time, and then his figure flashed and appeared before the pill furnace on the 2nd level. He asked, what is in there? He naturally intended to be cautious. What a joke. Just its aura had injured him, so could it possibly be anything ordinary? The divining flame fell silent for a long time before it replied, an arm. An arm. Yang Yi was stunned and asked, are you sure? The divining flame replied, I am. Yang Ye's face became quite unsightly, because he'd been injured by just an arm. Yang Yi fell silent for a moment before he asked in a low voice, whose arm? A fellow who was called the War God. The divining flame continued, actually, he wasn't just called a war god. He was the war god. A true war god. The #1 war god through the ages. Yang Yi asked, then what's his arm doing here? The divining flame replied, he's dead. That's why. Yang Yi glanced at the divining flame and asked, even the war god can die. The divining flame replied, the war god isn't invincible. Moreover, he died in battle. Actually, if he intended to flee, then very few in that world of ours would have been able to kill him. However, he didn't flee and fought until he took his last breath. Yang Yi asked, what's his arm doing here? The divining flame replied, Master obtained it by chance. Master had intended to refine it into medicinal pills, but some things occurred before he even began. In the end, the primordial pagoda was stolen by Xiaoqi. Its master. Yang Yi glanced at the divine flame. Obviously, the master that the divine flame spoke of was the old man in Taoist's robes. Meanwhile, the divine flame suddenly added, Do you know why I once told you to come to me after you accessed the 4th level? Yang Yi asked, Why? The divine flame answered, Because you'll only be able to endure my strength after putting that arm on, and you'll be able to take me out of here. After I put that arm on? Yang Yi continued, Are you sure I can? Are you sure that there won't be any problems? The divine flame replied, There shouldn't be any serious problems, because the Wargid's soul vanished a long time ago. There is no soul within that arm, and only some undying will remains within it. If you can inherit that will, then it'll be absolutely beneficial to you. Yang Yi asked, Is it powerful? Very powerful. The divine flame spoke in a low voice, You're experienced my strength. If you can use that arm, then you'll be able to fully endure my strength. So, do you think it's powerful now? Yang Yi nodded, and then he turned around and walked away. Meanwhile, the divine flame spoke abruptly, Where are you going? To change my arm. Yang Yi spoke excitedly, Once I change my arm, I'll attack the Yang clan. Why would I even need to participate in that fight for the position of successor? The divine flame spoke indifferently, Go on if you want to die. Yang Ye's face froze. What do you mean? The divine flame replied, Your body is still a little too weak. If you try to put that arm on, then it's very likely that your body won't be able to endure its strength. So, you must wait for your body to grow stronger before doing that. So that's why. Yang Yi nodded because he did feel that his body was quite weak. Yang Yi seemed to have thought of something and said, Right. If I want to put that arm on, does it represent that I'll have to chop off my own arm? No. The divine flame explained, Master has refined that arm, so only its blood and bones remain. Thus, you just have to change the blood and bones within your arm. Anyway, it's very simple. You'll understand when the time comes. As for now, you shouldn't try yet. Even though your current body is barely able to endure its strength, it'll be very dangerous. If you fail to endure its strength, then you'll be finished. Yang Yi thought for a moment and said, All right, just as the divine flame had said, it was best to be safer. The divine flame suddenly said, Right. Didn't you get a wooden sword? A wooden sword? Yang Yi was slightly stunned, and then he recalled the wooden sword. I did. Why? The divine flame remained silent for a long time before it said, That sword isn't ordinary. Yang Ye's eyes lit up when he heard that. After all, if the divine flame called it extraordinary, then the sword was definitely a precious treasure. As soon as he thought up to this point, Yang Yi quickly bid farewell to the divine flame and went to the world in the 1st level. Yang Yi glanced at the surroundings. He was about to look for the wooden sword when a ray of light suddenly flashed through the sky. Yang Yi looked up and saw a sword flying swiftly through the sky, and a little fellow was on the sword. It was none other than Snowy. Yang Yi was about to fly up there when the ray of light suddenly sped up. It grew faster and faster. In less than half a breath of time, the entire sky was actually filled with rays of light. There wasn't even a gap. It was caused by the extreme speed that the sword was traveling at. A solemn expression instantly covered Yang Ye's face, because he couldn't accomplish that. Or it should be said that his speed wasn't sufficient to accomplish that. Suddenly, a ray of light flashed, and then a sword appeared before him. It was the wooden sword. Moreover, Snowy was standing on it while excitement covered her chubby face. Snowy waved at Yang Yi. Obviously, she was telling him to get on. Yang Yi grinned and was about to get on the sword. However, the wooden sword suddenly shook violently, and then a ray of light flashed. Boom! An explosion resounded while Yang Ye's figure was blasted 3 kilometers away. Yang Yi glanced at his chest. At this moment, there was a very long gash on his chest. It was extremely deep and almost reached his internal organs. If he hadn't reacted quickly, he may have been sliced into two. Yang Yi looked up at the wooden sword. Suddenly, it shot forward like a bolt of lightning. Yang Ye's eyelids twitched at the sight of this, and he was about to flash away from there. However, the wooden sword suddenly stopped moving. It was because Snowy was holding tightly onto its hilt with both her claws. Meanwhile, Zir appeared by Yang Ye's side. She glanced at the injury on his chest and spoke softly, "Are you all right?" Yang Yi shook his head, and then he gazed at the wooden sword. "What the heck is it doing?" Zir shook her head and replied, "I don't know. All I know is that it only lets Snowy touch it." Yang Yi gazed at Snowy. At this moment, Snowy seemed to be saying something, and the sword gradually calmed down. Yang Yi hesitated for a moment and said, "Snowy, move aside." Snowy gazed at Yang Yi, and then she blinked. Even though she didn't know what Yang Yi intended to do, she still shot over to Zir's shoulder. Yang Yi started walking slowly towards the wooden sword. A moment later, a wave of terrifying intent surged out from him, and it swept towards the wooden sword. Slaughter sword intent. He intended to use slaughter sword intent to suppress the sword. Meanwhile, the wooden sword shook slightly. Boom! A sword howl resounded, and then a ray of light flashed like a bolt of lightning. Hiss! Yang Yi watched with astonishment as his slaughter sword intent was split into two, and then the wooden sword arrived less than a meter away from him. Yang Yi was astounded. He issued a command in his heart. An array of blood-red light flashed as a blood puppet moved in front of him. Boom! Hiss! A moment later, two figures were blasted away like cannonballs. At the same time, a blood-red arm appeared in the sky, and then it slowly descended to the ground. The two figures were Yang Yi and the blood puppet, and the blood-red arm that flew off belonged to the blood puppet. Not only had Yang Yi been unable to stop that attack, even the blood puppet couldn't. It had even lost an arm. After it struck both Yang Yi and the blood puppet back, the wooden sword seemed to have no intention to stop. Light flickered on its tip, and it was about to attack again. Meanwhile, Snowy shuddered, and then she flew over to the back of the wooden sword and wrapped her claws tightly around its hilt. The wooden sword gradually calmed down upon being embraced by Snowy, but light was still flickering on its tip. Obviously, it was still angry. Yang Yi was quite stunned, very stunned actually, because he hadn't expected the wooden sword to be that terrifying. Is that really just a wooden sword? After all, the blood puppet's strength far surpassed ordinary Zenith Realm experts. However, even it hadn't been able to stop that attack. If he'd resisted it on his own earlier, then he may have lost more than just an arm. Zir appeared by Yang Ye's side and spoke softly, "Are you all right?" Yang Yi shook his head and looked off into the distance. The wooden sword had practically fully calmed down, and the light on its tip had dispersed. Zir spoke softly, "There's something strange about that sword." Yang Yi nodded. Because it wasn't just strange, it was terrifying. Ordinary Zenith Realm experts were probably nothing before it. Just a sword was stronger than Zenith Realm experts. It sounded quite inconceivable indeed. So now there was a problem. It was so strong, and it had such a hot temper. So, how would he make it usable to him? Rely on the primordial pagoda? The primordial pagoda could suppress it, but what about once he left the pagoda? Without the pagoda there to help him suppress it, and it suddenly attacked him, then he would probably be unable to defend himself. But would the wooden sword willingly allow him to use it? Yang Yi shook his head and rejected that thought. It had such a hot temper, so he could only dream of it willingly allowing him to use it. At the very least, there was no hope for now. Zir spoke softly, "What should we do now? What should we do?" Yang Yi looked off into the distance. The wooden sword had calmed down completely. His gaze gradually became solemn as he gazed at the wooden sword. Obviously, its origins were absolutely extraordinary. Moreover, the Wu clan's Grand Elder had said that he would have to shoulder some sort of responsibility if he took the wooden sword. Yang Yi hadn't really cared about that responsibility. Yet now, he knew that it was probably extremely troublesome and difficult to deal with. Yang Yi remained silent for a long time before he shook his head. and he stopped thinking about things that still hadn't occurred. He glanced at Snowy, who was flying around with the wooden sword again, and a wisp of regret flashed through his eyes. If he could use it, then killing Zenith Realm experts would be like cutting through vegetables for him. Unfortunately, it refused to let him even touch it. Actually, he was still confident in his ability to suppress it because he had the primordial pagoda and sword domain. However, he didn't really want to use force against it, because his sword was his most trusted companion in battle. If it suddenly turned on him in battle, then he would be finished. Xianxia gazed at the wooden sword for a long time, and then he said, "I'll be back. You won't dare to treat me like this when I come back." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and vanished on the spot. In the outside world, Xianxia opened his eyes slowly. He glanced at the surroundings, and then he vanished on the spot. Outside the room, "You succeeded?" A voice resounded in his ears as soon as he left the room. He turned to look, and he saw an old man had suddenly appeared not too far away on his right, and it was the Wu clan's Grand Elder. Xianxia nodded. "I have." The Grand Elder took a deep and long glance at Xianxia, and shock flashed deep within his eyes. Less than half a month. If he hadn't witnessed it himself, he would absolutely not believe that someone could attain the rebirth realm in half a month. Because even the ancestor of the Wu clan, the martial ancestor Wu Mu, had used a month to accomplish that. But this young master of the Yang clan had actually used less than half a month. Half a month. The Grand Elder remained silent for a while, and his eyes drooped. A wisp of killing intent flashed through his eyes. Even though the Wu clan wasn't enemies with the Yang clan, he didn't want the Yang clan to have such a peerless genius. Because that wasn't just disadvantageous to the other clans, it was disadvantageous to the Wu clan too. Because once the Wu clan became enemies with the Yang clan, and the Yang clan had such a genius, then Xianxia would be a disaster for his Wu clan in the future. But it didn't take long for him to discard that intent to kill and gaze at Xianxia with a smile on his face. "Congratulations!" He didn't ponder for long before choosing to draw Xianxia over to his side. Because the price of attacking Xianxia would be too huge. Firstly, the Yang clan would definitely not let the matter rest. Perhaps it wouldn't launch a full-scale war against the Wu clan, but it would slaughter the Wu clan's younger generation. Secondly, he knew that Nanjing was very close to this young master of the Yang clan. If he attacked Xianxia, then even if Nanjing didn't attack the Wu clan, she would definitely become hostile towards it. In short, the harm outweighed the benefits of attacking Xianxia. Xianxia glanced at the Grand Elder. "Thank you. Please take me to see my wife. She wants to see you too. Come with me." As soon as he finished speaking, the Grand Elder vanished off into the distance. Xianxia tapped his right foot against the ground and transformed into a ray of black light that followed after the old man. The training grounds. It was where the disciples of the Wu clan sparred and competed. It was boundless, and the space here was even strengthened by a few dozen formations. Besides that, the mysterious energy of experts above the Zenith realm was strengthening the area. It could be said that even the full strength of a Zenith realm expert couldn't harm the space here. There were only two people here, Xianxia and Nanjing. She asked, "You've attained the rebirth realm?" Xianxia nodded. "What about you?" She replied, "Not yet, but it won't take long." Xianxia was stunned, and Nanjing flipped her palm, and Sky Split appeared in her grasp. "Let's fight for real?" Xianxia thought for a moment and replied, "All right." He just advanced to the rebirth realm, so he wanted to spar with someone too so that he could determine the extent of his strengths. It was the same for Nanjing. She'd received the martial god's inheritance and studied the experiences of the Wu clan's martial ancestor. Now, her overall strength had improved tremendously, so she needed someone to spar with. And Nanjing was about to attack when Xianxia suddenly looked off into the distance. "Grand Elder, can you keep this a secret?" A moment of silence ensued, and then the Grand Elder's voice came from afar. "Don't worry, not another soul will hear about your spar." Xianxia nodded, and then he gazed at Nanjing. "I'm going to fight seriously." She nodded slightly. "Me too." As soon as she finished speaking, she looked up at Xianxia. and then a ray of golden light appeared abruptly in front of Yang Yi. OM! A sword howl shot up into the air, and then a ray of light slashed against the golden light. Boom! An explosion resounded, and then both the rays of light exploded apart. After that, a terrifying wave of energy instantly swept towards the surroundings. Meanwhile, a ray of light from a spear shot out from the left. Everywhere it passed, the wave of energy was torn open like paper. At the same time, a ray of sword energy shot over from the right, and the wave of energy before it was obliterated. Just like that, both of them collided in the most violent manner. Bang! As soon as they came into contact, it sounded like a thunderclap had erupted there. The ground and space there shook violently, and then both the attacks exploded into bits. As for the energy that erupted from the point of collision, it instantly transformed into waves that swept incessantly towards the surroundings. However, the waves of energy were obliterated by a layer of invisible force when they arrived in front of Yang Yi and in Nanjing. They exchanged glances, and then they vanished on the spot. Clang! A clear and resounding sound of metal colliding arose. Yang Yi and Nanjing were just around a meter away from each other. Her spear was right in front of his face, but it had been stopped by his sword. A moment of silence ensued, and then Nanjing suddenly released her spear and charged forward. She instantly arrived in front of Yang Yi before slamming her fist forward. It was swift like a bolt of lightning. Yang Yi's eyes narrowed slightly at the sight of this, and he immediately swung his sword downwards. Right when he swung his sword, Nanjing stretched out her left hand, grabbed Sky Split, and stabbed it forward. It shot straight for Yang Yi's face again. Yang Yi was shocked. His sword that was descending towards Nanjing's fist was quickly changed into an angled flick. Clang! His sword stopped her spear, but Nanjing's fist slammed against his chest. As soon as her fist came into contact with his chest, she unfurled it and struck him. Boom! A muffled explosion resounded as Yang Yi was blasted around 3 kilometers away. As soon as he stopped himself, a wisp of scarlet red seeped out from the corner of his mouth. At the same time, his chest had caved in. Yang Yi wiped off the blood and gazed at Nanjing. Nice strategy! As soon as he finished speaking, a strand of intent suddenly surged out from within him. Slaughter sword intent. Nanjing nodded slightly. Let's fight with our true strength. As soon as she finished speaking, she took a step forward. In an instant, a strand of terrifying intent surged out from her. Yang Yi's expression changed when he saw it. At the same time, a shocked voice resounded. 6 types of intents. 6 types of returnal rank intents. 6 types of returnal rank intents that are merged together. As the voice finished speaking, it actually started to tremble. 6 types of returnal rank intents. Yang Yi was stunned as well. After all, Nanjing's intent had been at the rebirth rank previously. Yet now they'd advanced into the returnal rank. Moreover, all 6 of them had been merged together. My God! Yang Yi felt absolutely embarrassed right now. After all, he only possessed 2 types of intents, but Nanjing possessed 6. Meanwhile, the Grand Elder appeared here, and he stared at Nanjing without blinking. There was excitement, happiness, and a trace of regret in his eyes. He knew Nanjing possessed 6 types of intents, but at that time, her intents were only at the rebirth rank. The rebirth rank and the returnal rank were 2 completely different things. At this moment, he finally understood why their ancestor said that the younger generation of the Wu clan couldn't compare to her. They couldn't. They really couldn't. Could be said that if Nanjing came to the Wu clan 10 years earlier, no, just 3 years earlier, then there would definitely be a spot for her in the top 3 of the younger generation throughout the medium universe of Milky Way system. The Grand Elder took a deep breath, and then an extremely amiable smile appeared on his face. Miss N, according to my knowledge, your intents were only at the rebirth rank. Why are they at the returnal rank now? Yang Yi gazed at Nanjing because he wanted to know the answer as well. Nanjing pondered deeply for a moment and replied, I gained comprehension upon looking through the Wu clan's ancestors' experiences, and so they improved. Yang Yi was at a loss for words. The Grand Elder's expression was quite weird as well. She just looked through a compilation of experience and attained the returnal rank. He'd looked through it as well. Even though he'd comprehended many things, that was all he'd gained. This was the difference between an extraordinary genius and an ordinary genius. Meanwhile, Nanjing gazed at Yang Yi. "Shall we continue?" Yang Yi gazed at the Grand Elder. The latter nodded and vanished on the spot. Once the Grand Elder left, Nanjing gazed at Yang Yi. "Be careful." As soon as she finished speaking, she shook her hand slightly, and her spear shot forward like a bolt of golden lightning. Sky split that was enhanced by 6 types of returnal rank intents. Everywhere it passed, space warned before it. Moreover, the space in a huge area around Skysplit was actually rippling incessantly, and the space right at the center of Skysplit's path was actually gradually cracking apart. A solemn expression appeared on Yang Ye's face. He didn't dare act carelessly and issued a command in his heart. His sword floated around 1 m away from him to the side while he slowly clenched his right fist. A moment later, he slammed it forward. Heaven obliteration. A wave of terrifying force that carried the intent to obliterate surged out from Yang Ye's fist. Bang! In an instant, rumbling that shook the sky surged and resounded through the entire training grounds. At this moment, the entire training grounds was shaking like an earthquake had occurred. Meanwhile, Nanjing had vanished on the spot, and she was behind Skysplit when her figure appeared again. After that, she tapped her left foot down and leaped up into the air before kicking Skysplit's handle with her right leg. Hiss! Skysplit instantly transformed into a golden bolt of lightning that flashed forward. It was so swift that Yang Yi wasn't even able to react before it arrived in front of him, and the powerful force it carried caused the space around him to crack open. Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly. He stretched out his hand and his sword immediately flew back into his grasp. At the same time, an ancient sheath appeared in his left grasp. He sheathed his sword and immediately drew it. Heaven Rend. 10 overlapped Heaven Rends. After he attained the Rebirth Realm, Yang Ye's Heaven Rend had improved tremendously. He could overlap 10 Heaven Rends now, but it was also his limit for now. Yang Yi didn't know how strong 10 overlapped Heaven Rends were, and he really looked forward to finding out. He was about to find out right now. OM! A sword howl shot up into the sky, and then a ray of light flashed. Space cracked apart in the wake of Yang Ye's sword energy. The spear and sword energy slammed against each other. Clang! The spear shook violently, and then Nanjing and Yang Yi respectively appeared behind their spear and sword. However, Nanjing was slightly faster. She grabbed Skysplit and immediately stabbed it forward. So, when Yang Yi finally grabbed his sword, he had no choice but to raise it and block her attack. Clang! Yang Yi was blasted far away. Meanwhile, Nanjing tapped the tip of her foot down, and then numerous images of her appeared here. All of them were her afterimages, and the most terrifying part was that they seemed real. Meanwhile, Nanjing's body had appeared in front of Yang Yi, and then Skysplit swept towards him from left to right. This time, Yang Yi didn't try to block it, and he just stabbed his sword towards her stomach. He intended to exchange injury for injury. If it was anyone else, his attack would definitely be lethal, but he was facing a Nanjing, and they would definitely not kill each other. So, if their attacks were about to strike a lethal blow, then they would definitely stop it. The reason he chose to exchange blows with a Nanjing was because he had no other choice. Her instinct in combat was truly too formidable. Even he who possessed the enlightened sword heart was only barely able to fight her in close quarters. If it was anyone else, that person would probably be dead by now. After all, even though a Nanjing hadn't used any techniques, her moves were even more terrifying than techniques. Every move of hers was lethal. And Nanjing frowned when she noticed that Yang Yi intended to suffer an injury in order to land a blow, but it didn't take long for her brows to relax. A moment later, a wave of terrifying intent surged out from within her. The force of Yang Ye's sword was instantly suppressed by it. At the same time, she charged forward and slammed her fist at his chest. Bang! A muffled bang resounded, and then Yang Yi was pushed backwards repeatedly. Meanwhile, a Nanjing suddenly appeared in front of Yang Yi while holding Sky Split in her grasp, and then it shot forward swiftly like thunder, Fortunately, Yang Yi was able to react. He immediately sheathed his sword, drew it, and swung it. However, a Nanjing spear sped up abruptly and moved sideways slightly. This movement caused it to instantly strike against the hilt of Yang Ye's sword, causing Yang Yi to be blasted over 3 kilometers away before he could even draw his sword. A moment later, a Nanjing shot forward once more. The Grand Elder gazed at Yang Yi, and there was a trace of praise in his eyes, because as far as he was concerned, it was very shocking that Yang Yi had been able to fight a Nanjing for so long. After all, she possessed 6 intents. Actually, as far as he was concerned, the most terrifying part about her wasn't those 6 intents, it was her instinct in combat. And Nanjing's combat instinct was something that even struck slight terror in his heart. That was why he felt like that about Yang Yi. It was because while Yang Yi was being suppressed by her instinct in combat, he was able to resist her until now and frequently counterattack. However, the Grand Elder felt that it was only a matter of time before Yang Yi lost. Boom! Suddenly, a muffled explosion resounded from afar. The Grand Elder looked over and saw Yang Yi had been blasted over 6 kilometers away. However, and Nanjing didn't press her advantage and attack again. She stopped instead. And Nanjing gazed at Yang Yi. Are you not going to use your trump cards? Yang Yi glanced at his right hand. At this moment, he couldn't feel his right hand. And Nanjing's combat instinct wasn't the only thing which was strong. Her speed and strength were horrifying as well. Especially her control of her strength. It was terrifying. Yang Yi looked up at her and smiled. Let's just stop here. All right? He had more trump cards, of course. They were the laws of darkness, the sword of rebirth, and the sword domain. Especially the sword domain. Even though a Nanjing had 6 returnal rank intents, his sword domain could still suppress them. Even though he knew she definitely had trump cards too, and he wanted to see what they were, he didn't want both his and her trump cards to be exposed before the Wu clan. Trump cards that were exposed weren't trump cards anymore. One had to always keep something up one's sleeve. And Nanjing glanced at Yang Yi and nodded. All right, obviously. She understood what he meant. Yang Yi smiled. I'm going to the Yang clan. Are you coming? And Nanjing pondered deeply for a moment and replied, Go ahead without me. I haven't finished learning a move. Yang Yi was slightly stunned and asked, What move? She replied, You'll know when the time comes. Yang Yi thought for a moment and nodded. Then I'll be going first. Take care. She suddenly went over to Yang Yi, looked him in the eye for a long time and said, I will. Yang Yi smiled. All right, I'll be waiting for you. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished into the distance. Once Yang Yi left, the Grand Elder appeared before Nanjing and said, Missin, the Patriarch would like to meet you. So, he suddenly looked towards the distant sky and spoke with surprise. He's actually here. Yang Yi didn't stay in martial origin system. The Yang clan's fight for succession was about to begin in half a month, so he didn't have much time left. It didn't take long for Yang Yi to leave martial origin system. However, as soon as he left it and arrived in the starry sky, 2 old men appeared before him. A ferocious expression instantly appeared on his face when he saw them, because they were the 2 experts who'd come to Sky continent to kill him and took little Sky's soul. They were Yang Shan and Yang Shi. Yang Shan's gaze descended onto Yang Yi. Come, let me guess. Which young master do you belong to? The 7th young master? The 4th young master? Or perhaps... Suddenly Yang Yi said, Come, guess when you'll die. Yang Shan's eyes instantly narrowed slightly when he heard Yang Yi. He was about to speak when Yang Yi suddenly vanished on the spot. Yang Shan was slightly stunned, and then he laughed with ridicule. How laughable! As soon as he finished speaking, both of them vanished on the spot. Once the 3 of them vanished, the Wu clan's Grand Elder appeared here. He glanced off towards the side and said, Are you not going to show yourself? The space there trembled slightly, and then a woman walked out from there. It was Yang Danqing. Yang Danqing bowed slightly to the Grand Elder. Senior. The Grand Elder spoke indifferently. Do you need something? Yan Danqing grinned slightly and said, I'd like to inquire about the identity of that person from before. I'll be extremely grateful if you can tell me who he is. The Grand Elder waved his hand. I don't know. Leave. My Wu clan doesn't want to get mixed up in your Yang clan's business. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and vanished on the spot. Yang Danqing's face instantly turned cold. She remained silent for a long time before she vanished into the distance. Yang Yi didn't run towards Martial Origin System, and he went towards the depths of the boundless starry sky instead. He raised his speed to its limits. So, it only took a short while for him to leave Martial Origin System and enter the boundless reaches of space. Suddenly, Yang Yi stopped, and then Yang Shan and Yang Shi appeared not too far behind him. Why aren't you running anymore? Yang Shi ridiculed. Or perhaps you intend to kill us instead? Yang Yi turned to look at them, and then he said, which one of you will fight me first? Or perhaps you intend to join forces. Join forces. Yang Shan laughed with ridicule. Against you? He took a step forward while he spoke, and then he stretched out his right hand. A mysterious wave of energy instantly formed a spider web that enveloped down towards Yang Yi. At this moment, Yang Yi felt like all his paths of retreat had been sealed off. Yang Yi glanced at Yang Shan. Needless to say, Yang Shan was very strong, and he wasn't much weaker than the blood puppets. A moment of silence ensued, and then Yang Yi suddenly slammed his fist forward. He didn't use heaven obliteration, and it was just a very normal punch. Bang! As expected, Yang Yi was blasted away by Yang Shan's energy. After flying over 3 kilometers away, Yang Yi had just stopped when his figure transformed into a shadow that fled off into the distance. A wisp of ridicule curled up on the corners of Yang Shan's mouth. Ant! As soon as he finished speaking, he shot off in pursuit of Yang Yi. Suddenly, Yang Ye's fleeing figure vanished on the spot. Watch out! Yang Shi's astounded voice resounded. At practically the exact same moment, Yang Shan's expression changed, and then a shadow appeared behind him. At the same time, 2 waves of terrifying pressure pressed down upon him. Hiss! The tip of a sword pierced through the back of Yang Shan's head. Yang Shan's eyes opened wide, and they were filled with disbelief and a trace of regret, because he just realized that Yang Yi seeming to be utterly weak and fleeing was just an act. Yang Yi had fled to put on a display of weakness, and it was to make him lower his guard, act carelessly, and underestimate Yang Yi. Yang Yi had succeeded. How dare you? Yang Shi shouted with fury when he witnessed this scene. He was about to attack when his eyes opened wide, and his hairs stood on end. A moment later, a terrifying aura surged out from within him. However, at the same time that his aura surged out, a ray of light had pierced through the back of his head. Just like Yang Shan, Yang Shi's figure stiffened on the spot, and Yang Yi was 300 m away from him. Who are you? Suddenly, Yang Danqing walked out from a point in space. She stared at Yang Yi, but there was no intent to kill in her eyes. Conversely, she seemed quite calm. However, her aura was forming layers around her. Yang Shan had just been killed when she arrived, and right when she was about to attack, Yang Shi had been killed as well. 2 Zenith Realm experts had been killed in an instant. After all, Yang Shan and Yang Shi weren't ordinary Zenith Realm experts. Yang Yi walked towards Yang Danqing with his sword in hand. Who am I? Why don't you guess? Yang Danqing glanced at the sword in Yang Ye's grasp and said, as far as I know, no one besides 8th brother uses a sword. But 8th brother has no enmity with me and my brother, so he would definitely not. Suddenly, Yang Yi said, how do you know there's no enmity between us? If I'm not wrong, there's a debt of blood between us. Actually, he'd guessed who she was, because Yang Xian told him that Yang Shan and Yang Shi were Yang Yen and Yang Danqing's subordinates. So, she was clearly Yang Danqing. A debt of blood? Yang Danqing's eyes narrowed slightly. Show me your face and let me see if you're 8th brother. Yang Danqing had never considered that the person before her was Yang Yi. Or it should be said that many people in the Yang clan still had no knowledge of Yang Yi. Moreover, she'd merely sent people to kill Yang Yi and hadn't seen Yang Yi at all. Coupled with the fact that the people she sent told her that Yang Yi was dead. so as far as she was concerned, Yang Yi was dead. You'll find out right away. As soon as Yang Yi finished speaking, his figure vanished on the spot, and he was in front of Yang Danqing when his figure appeared once more. After that, his sword descended upon her. Yang Danqing's eyes narrowed slightly. She didn't collide directly with Yang Ye's attack. She immediately twisted her right foot on the ground and vanished on the spot. She was almost 10 kilometers away when her figure appeared once more. But as soon as she stopped there, she seemed to have noticed something, and it made her expression change drastically. Because a ray of light had arrived before her. The sword of rebirth. It only took a moment for Yang Danqing to calm down, and then she swiftly clenched her fist. Bang! 3 rays of green light surged out from her. One of them shot towards Yang Ye's attack while the other 2 shot off in Yang Ye's direction. Bang! 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 3 explosions resounded as Yang Yi and Yang Danqing both moved over a kilometer backwards. Yang Danqing glanced at her arms. At this moment, her arms had over a dozen tiny holes on them. She fell silent for an instant before she looked up at Yang Yi. What a powerful sword technique! Yang Yi glanced at his chest. His chest was completely mangled. He looked up and shot a glance at Yang Danqing. Needless to say, she was quite strong indeed. There were 2 reasons why he hadn't utilized the laws of darkness. Firstly, he wanted to keep her alive because he wanted to gain information about Little Sky's whereabouts. If he just asked her like this, he wouldn't just be unable to gain any information, he would even expose his own identity instead. As for the second reason, it was because Yang Danqing was in a fully vigilant state. So, he wasn't 100% confident that using the laws of darkness would allow him to kill her. Actually, there was a third reason, and it was because he wanted to experience the strength of these geniuses from the Yang clan. You aren't 8th brother. Suddenly, Yang Danqing said, you want to put the blame on 8th brother, so that we'll fight 8th brother to the death, and then you can reap the benefits, right? Do you want to know why I'm sure you aren't 8th brother? It's because I'm not interested in listening to your nonsense. As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Ye's figure vanished on the spot. At the instant his figure vanished, a ray of light flashed, and the space in its path was torn open like paper. Yang Danqing's eyes narrowed slightly at the sight of this, and the intent to kill flickered in them. Meanwhile, the sword energy arrived before her. A ray of green light suddenly shot out of the center of Yang Danqing's forehead when the sword energy arrived just a few inches away from her forehead. Bang! The green light instantly pierced through Yang Ye's sword energy. The sword energy dispersed immediately, but the green light continued forward towards Yang Yi like a bolt of lightning. Everywhere it passed, space was torn into bits. It was an absolutely shocking sight. Yang Yi casually stabbed his sword forward. Bang! The green light rumbled and dispersed. A moment later, Yang Ye's figure vanished on the spot, and he was in front of Yang Danqing when he appeared again. He sheathed his sword and drew it. 10 overlapped heaven rends. Yang Danqing's pupils constricted when she noticed the strength of Yang Ye's attack, and then a ray of green light surged out from within her. Bang! A resounding explosion surged through the surroundings, and then a figure was blasted flying. Besides that, an arm flew off into space as well. It was Yang Danqing's figure. At the moment Yang Danqing's figure was blasted flying, a sword howl had suddenly resounded, and then a ray of light instantly arrived before her. Suddenly, a glowing finger flashed down from far above. Bang! The sword energy was blasted into bits while a figure was blasted flying as well. It was Yang Ye's figure. After flying for almost 3 kilometers, Yang Yi finally stopped himself, and then he looked up into space. Meanwhile, a voice suddenly came from high above. The fight for succession has not begun. Return. An expert of the Yang clan. Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly while a ghastly expression filled his eyes. Yang Danqing wiped off the blood on the corner of her mouth, and then she shot an icy-cold glance at Yang Yi. I'll repay you tenfold for that arm of mine. You... Suddenly, her expression changed drastically. At the same time, a furious shout resounded from high above. How presumptuous! After that, a finger flashed down from above and descended swiftly. The reason Yang Danqing's expression had changed drastically was that a figure had suddenly appeared behind her. At the same time, two terrifying intents instantly pressed down upon her. Besides that, there was a mysterious force that was even stronger than those intents. The intents were naturally slaughter intent and sword intent, and the mysterious force was the sword domain. With those three forces pressing down upon her, she wasn't just unable to flee, even her profound energy had instantly fallen deathly silent. Of course, all of that only happened for an instant. However, that instant was entirely sufficient for Yang Yi. A ray of light flashed. Hiss! A head flew up into the air. After he sliced off Yang Danqing's head, Yang Yi turned around, sheathed his sword, and then drew it. A beam of sword energy shot forward. The finger which had arrived above him was instantly sliced into two, and then it exploded apart. How dare you! A voice that carried boundless rage descended like a thunderclap from high above, and then an aura pressed down from above. Yang Yi sheathed his sword. He held the ancient sheath in his grasp as he shot an icy cold up into space. Do you want to die? Was it rash? It was a little rash. Yang Yi was very well aware that by killing Yang Danqing in front of this expert from the Yang clan, he would definitely be offending the expert. But he didn't care, because he knew that the Yang clan wouldn't kill him because of someone who was dead. The dead had no value. Besides that, he was very well aware that the greater the potential he displayed, the more highly the higher-ups of the Yang clan would think of him. Just like Yang Lianshuang. He was certain that no matter how much trouble she caused the Yang clan in the outside world, the Yang clan would definitely help her deal with it. Of course, the precondition was that someone had value. In the beginning, he'd planned to capture Yang Danqing alive, and he was about to succeed. But the arrival of this expert from the Yang clan allowed him to realize that capturing her alive was impossible. So he'd chosen to kill her. Once Yang Yi spoke those words, the aura high above had suddenly dispersed, and then an old man appeared not too far away from Yang Yi. A Zenith realm expert. Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly while his profound energy started to circulate. It was because the old man was much stronger than his blood puppets. The old man gazed at Yang Yi. What did you say? Why don't you say that one more time? Yang Yi nodded, and then he vanished on the spot. He was in front of the old man when his figure appeared once more, and then he drew his sword and swung it. The old man's gaze instantly turned icy cold, and then he flipped his right palm and slapped it forward. Boom! At the instant he slapped his palm forward, the space in a huge area started to shake violently like an earthquake was surging through it. Bang! An explosion resounded as Yang Ye's figure was blasted over 3 kilometers away. However, his figure suddenly transformed into a ray of light that vanished on the spot. The Sword of Rebirth. The Sword of Rebirth that was enhanced by 2 types of returnal rank intents. A ray of light flashed. Boom! The light dispersed to reveal the old man had been pushed over 1 kilometer away. The old man looked down at his right hand. At this moment, the center of his palm had a hole in it. He fell silent for a moment before he looked up at Yang Yi. 2 types of returnal rank intents. Slaughter intent and sword intent. He paused for a moment and continued, Which young master are you? Yang Yi replied, You'll find out in the future. The old man shook his head. You've broken the rules. So, return to the discipline hall with me right now. He stretched his hand forward, and then a powerful wave of suction force sucked Yang Yi over to him. Meanwhile, Yang Yi vanished abruptly on the spot. The old man's expression changed at the exact same instant, and then his figure vanished on the spot. He was 3 kilometers to the left when he appeared again. However, his pupils constricted when he just appeared there, and then he vanished once more. At the same time, a terrifying aura suddenly swept through the starry sky and caused the space around it to ripple violently. 3 breaths of time later, everything calmed down. At this moment, Yang Yi and the old man were less than 300 m away from each other. Yang Yi was still standing with his sword in hand. The old man stared at Yang Yi while undisguised shock and a trace of fear could be seen in his eyes. If someone was standing behind his back right now, that person would see 2 extremely deep cuts there. Moreover, his back was covered in blood. Yang Yi glanced coldly at the old man. It's not that I can't kill you. Understand. Yang Yi turned around and walked away once he finished speaking. Suddenly, the old man said, You broke the rules. The discipline hall won't let you go. Yang Danqing's parents won't let you go too. It's best for you to return and admit your crimes. Otherwise? Yang Yi suddenly stopped and said, They can feel free to come for me. As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi vanished on the spot. The old man silently gazed at the Yang Yi had been standing on for a long time. Around 10 breaths of time later, a white-haired old man suddenly appeared by the old man's side. The white-haired old man glanced at him and said, Yang Lin, you actually lost? The old man called Yang Lin shook his head. I almost died. The white-haired old man was visibly surprised. Do you know which young master it was? Yang Lin shook his head again. I don't. At the very least, he doesn't exist amongst the known young masters. The white-haired old man fell silent for a moment and said, No matter which young master he is, since he dared to offend our discipline hall, then we have to make him feel our power. Otherwise, all those other young masters would think that we're easy to bully. Yang Lin hesitated for a moment and said, We have to be careful. He's not someone easy to deal with. The white-haired old man laughed coldly. Which one of our Yang clan's young masters is easy to deal with? Yang Lin nodded, and then he glanced at Yang Danqing's corpse. He said, Yang Kong will probably not let the matter rest. He's really protective of that precious daughter of his. Now that Yang Danqing was killed right in front of me, I'm afraid that even I... The white-haired old man shook his head. Who can he blame if her skill was inferior to her opponent? Of course, this new young master is really ruthless. He didn't leave any room for maneuver, and he didn't even give her the chance to be reincarnated. Yang Lin spoke in a low voice. Now that this fellow has joined in, the competition for the position of successor will be interesting. Unfortunately, Yang Lianshuang isn't male. The white-haired old man nodded. It's a pity indeed. I heard she has attained the zenith realm. Yang Lin was stunned speechless. The Yang clan had over 20 large worlds and countless medium and small worlds. Amongst these worlds, Heaven Void Continent was the largest and most prosperous. Because it was the base world of the Yang clan, it was the Yang clan's headquarters. Fecta City. Fecta City was the largest city on Heaven Void Continent, and it was the Yang clan's base city. It was huge to the point it seemed boundless. Even though it was huge, the entire city was very quiet. Because the city was only inhabited by some special organizations within the Yang clan. Only the Yang clan's members and some special organizations of the Yang clan, the entire city had no other outsiders in it. It was the center of the Yang clan's command. Fecta City was bound to not be peaceful during this month, because those young masters of the Yang clan would be returning. Immortal Phoenix Pavilion. Yang Xian sat at the seat of the host. Her eyes were closed, and she seemed to be in a meditative state. She was the only one in the hall. Meanwhile, an armored figure suddenly appeared in the hall. Yang Xian didn't open her eyes. What is it? The armored figure spoke in a low voice. Yang Danqing is dead. Her killer was a sword cultivator. Yang Xian's eyes opened abruptly. Was it him? The armored figure replied. I dare not say for certain, but it's very likely. Because only the 8th young master is a sword cultivator, and the 8th young master has no reason to kill Yang Danqing. Then it is him. Yang Xian's were slowly clenched together. I knew he wouldn't die that easily. Not only did he survive, he seems to have grown even stronger. She gazed at the armored figure and continued. Have you located his whereabouts? The armored figure shook its head. No. Right? He killed Yang Danqing in front of an elder from the disciple hall. So we aren't the only ones looking for him. The discipline hall and Yang Danqing's father, Yang Kong, are looking for him. Yang Xian suddenly stood up. We must find him before they do or he'll be in danger. The armored figure nodded. I've sent people to search for him. Right, those other young masters are probably searching for him too. Besides that, the Hall of Elders seems to have sent people to investigate him as well. Yang Xian nodded slightly. They would naturally be curious when one more young master just appeared out of nowhere, and it's actually one who isn't ordinary. But they would probably never expect this young master to be the son of the person they abandoned and forgot all those years ago. The armored figure asked, "Will the Hall of Elders acknowledge him?" Xianxia laughed coldly. "Of course. So long as he possesses natural talent and potential, they'll acknowledge him. Not to mention that he belongs to the Yang clan, and he has the bloodline of the Yang clan." She gazed at the armored figure and continued, "Use all the resources available to us. He must be found before they find him. We especially can't allow Yang Kong to find him first. His current strength is utterly insufficient to resist Yang Kong." "Understood." The armored figure nodded and left. After the armored figure left, Xianxia sat back down and spoke softly. "You killed Yang Danqing before an elder of the Disciple Hall? Your strength has grown to such an extent." As she spoke up to this point, she seemed to have thought of something, and it made her face gradually turn gloomy. Yang Yi didn't head to Heaven Void Continent. He went to Yang Yan's territory, Yanqing Continent, instead. He'd come to the Yang clan with the objective of rescuing Little Sky, and Little Sky's soul was definitely in Yang Yan's possession. So he naturally went to look for Yang Yan. Unfortunately, he didn't find Yang Yan. Yanqing City. Because of the seventh young master of the Yang clan, Yangxing, Yanqing City was in pieces. However, Yang Yan clearly had no intention to abandon it. So he'd sent many people to rebuild the city. All of them were cultivators and not ordinary people. So Yanqing City had been almost completely restored in a short while. Yang Yi, who couldn't find Yang Yan, left the city, but he didn't leave. He just stood in midair around 3 kilometers away from the city. He gazed at the city for a long time, and then he suddenly drew his sword and swung it. OM! A sword howl resounded, and then a ray of sword energy shot down like a shooting star. Boom! In an instant, Yanqing City was cut into 2. A moment later, a ferocious voice resounded in the sky above the city. "Yang Yan, get the fuck out here." As soon as the voice finished resounding, another ray of sword energy descended upon the city. Boom! The entire city collapsed in an instant. A moment of silence ensued. Boom! 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 3 formidable aura suddenly shot up into the air from within the ruins of Yanqing City, and then 3 old men appeared not too far away from Yang Yi. 3 Zenith Realm experts. The old man in luxurious robes who led the group stared at Yang Yi. "You're that mysterious fellow who killed our 3rd young miss." Yang Yi waved his hand slightly, and light flickered on his sword. "Tell your young master to show himself." The old man replied in a low voice. "No matter which young master you are, do you know that acting like this before the competition begins is against the rules? The Hall of Elders and Disciple Hall won't." Suddenly, a ray of light flashed. The old man's expression changed slightly, and he hurriedly slapped his palm forward. Bang! The old man was blasted over 300 m away. The 2 other old men behind him were about to attack, but the old man in a luxurious robe stopped them. Meanwhile, Yang Yi said, "I'll repeat myself one last time. Tell your young master to show himself." The old man in a luxurious robe gazed at Yang Yi for a long time, and then he said, "The young master went into closed-door cultivation a month ago. As for where he's cultivating, even we don't know that." Meanwhile, his eyelids twitched abruptly because Yang Yi was about to attack, and he quickly added, "Just think about it. Would he not show himself if he really was in the city?" Yang Yi fell silent for a few breaths of time, and then he asked, "Then where is he?" The old man shook his head. "We're just his subordinates. We aren't qualified to be aware of his whereabouts. However, someone definitely knows where he is." Yang Yi said, "Tell me." The old man was about to speak when he suddenly looked up towards the distant sky. "He's here." Bang! The space in a huge area trembled violently, and then a black shadow appeared behind Yang Yi. Yang Yi's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he turned around and drew his sword. 10 overlapped heaven rends. Boom! Yang Yi was blasted 3 kilometers away, and the shadow was merely pushed around 1 kilometer back. Yang Yi glanced at his slightly numb hand, and then he looked up into the distance. There was a black-robed middle-aged man there. If one looked carefully, one would realize that the middle-aged man's appearance was quite similar to Yang Danqing. It was Yang Danqing and Yang Yan's father, Yang Kong. Yang Kong stared at Yang Yi. "Which young master are you?" Yang Yi pointed his sword towards the ground at an angle. "Why don't you guess?" Yang Kong gazed at Yang Yi for a long time and said, "Even though the Yang clan's fight for succession is brutal, we never go too far. Not only did you kill Danqing, you didn't even give her the chance to be reincarnated." Yang Yi shook his head. "I don't know about that. If I wasn't lucky, I would have died at the hands of your daughter and son. They never thought of showing any mercy to me." Yang Kong spoke in a low voice. "Who are you?" Yang Yi shrugged. "Is that important?" Yang Kong fell silent for a long time, and then he said, "It's not important indeed. No matter who you are, you're going to die today." As soon as he finished speaking, his figure vanished on the spot. Boom! Yang Yi instantly appeared 3 kilometers away, and as soon as he stopped himself, the black shadow had appeared in front of him again. Bang! Another explosion resounded, and Yang Yi was blasted another 3 kilometers away. He was too swift. Swift to the point even Yang Yi couldn't see him. Even though Yang Kong was at the Zenith Realm too, his strength wasn't something ordinary Zenith Realm experts could compare to. Even the blood puppets were far inferior to him. If Yang Yi was still at the Dualism Realm, Yang Yi would definitely not be a match for Yang Kong. Fortunately, he wasn't at the Dualism Realm, he was at the Rebirth Realm. At the moment Yang Kong's figure vanished, Yang Yi slowly closed his eyes. Earlier, he'd been using his eyes to see, yet now he was using his heart. Yang Yi twisted his right foot slightly, and his figure moved slightly sideways towards the right before drawing his sword. Bang! Yang Yi was blasted 3 kilometers away again. However, Yang Kong had been blasted almost 2 kilometers away as well. This time, Yang Kong didn't attack again, and he glanced at his palm instead. Only half his palm remained right now, and the other half had been cut off by Yang Ye's attack. Yang Kong fell silent for a moment before he looked up at Yang Yi. "The enlightened sword heart. I underestimated you." The other 3 Zenith Realm experts were about to attack, but Yang Kong waved his hand. "I'll do it myself." As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward and pressed his palms together. Bang! A powerful aura suddenly surged out from within him, and the space in a huge area seemed like it was boiling under the effects of that aura. The space was rippling violently, and it was a truly shocking sight. A moment of silence ensued before Yang Kong pressed both his palms forward in Yang Ye's direction. Palm of sorrow! 2 huge energy palms flashed forward. The space before them instantly collapsed, and the entire area started trembling violently like an earthquake was surging through it. Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly beneath his black robe. He didn't dare act carelessly. He twisted his wrist slightly, and then light started flickering on the sword precursor. At the same time, Slaughter Sword Intent appeared around him. The Slaughter Sword Intent made his sword seem like it had come to life, and it was ceaselessly emanating sword howls. Right when Yang Yi was about to swing his sword, the energy palms suddenly overlapped over each other. Bang! At the instant they finished overlapping, a massive expanse of space collapsed in an instant, and the entire area turned pitch black. However, Yang Kong's expression suddenly changed at this instant, because when the surroundings went dark, he noticed to his astonishment that the dark matter and dark energy in the surroundings had suddenly started converging around him. Besides that, his overlapped energy palms had been instantly obliterated by the dark energy and dark matter. The laws of darkness. Yang Kong was horrified. His figure flashed with the intention of escaping the black hole. However, it was still a little too late. The black hole suddenly shrunk inwards, and then exploded apart. That wasn't the end of it. The other 3 Zenith Realm experts watched with shock as the expanse of darkness shrunk incessantly and exploded without end. Just like that, it shrunk and exploded 5 times in succession. When the final explosion resounded, a figure was blasted out of the black hole. The expressions of those 3 Zenith Realm experts instantly changed at the sight of the figure. because it was Yang Kong. At this moment, Yang Kong was in a very sorry state. His entire body was covered in injuries. Besides that, his right arm was gone. The most striking injury was his right eye, because it was gone as well, and it was replaced by a horrifying blood-red hole. There was a palm-sized black talisman on his chest. At this moment, it was ceaselessly emanating hair-thin black threads of energy. The black energy was like a spiderweb that enveloped Yang Kong completely. Yang Kong looked off into the distance. Besides disbelief, there was deep fear in his left eye. He'd almost died just now. If it wasn't for the talisman on his chest, he would be dead. The talisman was something the patriarch of the Yang clan had given him many years ago, and he'd always been reluctant to use it, because it was extraordinarily precious, and it could defend him against the joint forces of at least 5 Zenith Realm experts. It was that talisman which had saved his life. The space in the distance calmed down slowly, and it didn't take long for Yang Yi to appear before Yang Kong and the others' fields of vision. At this moment, Yang Ye's face was slightly pale. However, there was excitement in his eyes. Yang Kong had shattered space and caused the surroundings to be transformed into a black hole. Yang Yi had been shocked to notice that he could actually control it, just like he'd controlled the black hole from that day. It was an absolutely pleasant surprise, because he could control all the dark matter and dark energy within the black hole. To put it simply, his strength would grow tremendously while he was within a black hole. Moreover, he could use the dark matter and dark energy in the black hole to protect himself. Simply speaking, he was confident in his ability to fight 5 Zenith Realm experts while within a black hole. The only depressing part was that it exhausted too much energy. Controlling the black hole just now had instantly exhausted all his profound energy. Moreover, he'd almost been exhausted to the point of being unable to stay standing. Otherwise, Yang Yi could have killed Yang Kong even if Yang Kong had the protection of that talisman. Unfortunately, he didn't have the strength to do so. Yang Yi restrained his thoughts, flipped his palm, and an energy pearl appeared in his grasp. After he swallowed it, he instantly recovered almost half his profound energy. So he withdrew another. Once he swallowed the second energy pearl, his energy was fully replenished. The laws of darkness. Meanwhile, Yang Kong spoke abruptly. An extraordinary form of the laws of darkness. Who are you? Yang Yi started walking slowly towards Yang Kong. I think you definitely know where your son is, right? Yang Kong's expression changed, and he spoke in a low voice. The fight for succession hasn't begun. Going after him now is against the rules. Do you know what the consequences of going against my Yang clan's rules are? Yang Yi shrugged. I don't want to know. All I want to know is where your son is. To be honest, I'm running out of patience. Once I run out of patience, even I don't know what I'll be capable of. Is that so? Suddenly, a voice resounded, and then a white-haired old man and a black-robed old man appeared here, the elders of the Discipline Hall. The white-haired old man gazed at Yang Yi. Follow us back to the Discipline Hall. If you're smart, you'll follow us obediently. Yang Yi shook his head. I refuse. The white-haired old man's eyes narrowed slightly. No young master has dared to offend our Discipline Hall. No one has ever dared to do that. Suddenly, Yang Yi vanished on the spot. The white-haired old man's expression changed. Watch out! Yang Kong's pupils constricted abruptly, and then a ray of light flashed through him. Hiss! A string of blood sprayed out from the center of Yang Kong's forehead while his body stiffened on the spot. Yang Yi sheathed his sword, and then he turned to look at the white-haired old man. There's a first time for everything. No one has done it in the past, but someone has now. Yang Yi was no fool, and he'd never thought about challenging the Yang clan's Discipline Hall. However, he had no other choice. The Discipline Hall had tried to stop him from killing Yang Danqing, and he was determined to kill her because he didn't want to let her go so that she could scheme against him. At the moment, he knew that the Discipline Hall would definitely not let him off easily. At the very least, they would look for trouble with him. Sure enough, the Discipline Hall was here again. What should he do? Try to seek reconciliation with them? Or beg for mercy? No, both wouldn't work. He would only be asking for insult by trying any one of those methods. Since that was the case, why should he give them any face? His objective was very simple, and it was to make a show of strength, an utter show of strength. He wanted the Yang clan's higher-ups to see his potential. When his potential was sufficiently huge, he believed that the discipline hall would be helpless against him. Because at that time, the higher-ups of the Yang clan wouldn't allow others to harm him. Of course, the precondition was that he had sufficient potential. Breaking the Yang clan's rules was definitely not something that could be forgiven easily. However, he believed that when he displayed sufficient potential, he could stand above many rules of the Yang clan. Shock flashed through the eyes of those 3 Zenith Realm experts when they saw that Yang Yi actually dared to challenge the Discipline Hall. After all, the Discipline Hall status in the Yang clan was slightly transcendent. It could be said that besides a few in the Yang clan, everyone else in the Yang clan, including the young masters, were subject to the Discipline Hall's rules. It could be said that even those young masters had to give face to the Discipline Hall. But this fellow before them was actually openly challenging the Discipline Hall. It was a first. The white-haired old man's face instantly turned cold, and he stared at Yang Yi. "Do you realize what you're saying?" Yang Yi nodded. "I do." The white-haired old man gazed at Yang Yi for a long time, and then he nodded. A moment later, he vanished on the spot. At the exact same moment, Yang Yi suddenly drew his sword and swung it. Bang! An explosion resounded as Yang Ye's figure was blasted 3 kilometers away. Yang Ye's figure had just stopped moving when the old man appeared in front of him again. And then a wave of powerful aura slammed down upon Yang Yi like a mountain. Yang Yi felt suffocated beneath this aura, and his entire body felt like it was about to collapse. At the same time, the space around him had even started to warp and crack open. "He's so strong." Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly. The white-haired old man was extraordinarily strong. He was much stronger than Yang Kong, whom Yang Yi had just fought. So Yang Yi didn't dare act carelessly at all. Bang! Slaughter sword intent swept out from within him, and it instantly relieved a large amount of the pressure on Yang Yi. However, the white-haired old man suddenly slammed his fist forward. Yang Yi didn't even hesitate to swing his sword. Bang! The powerful force in the white-haired old man's fist instantly blasted Yang Yi backwards. But the white-haired old man didn't move at all. Yang Ye's attack hadn't been able to push him back at all. Moreover, the white-haired old man even pressed forward and arrived in front of Yang Yi before slamming his fist at Yang Yi again. Boom! Yang Yi was blasted 3 kilometers away again. Once he stopped himself, some blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. This time, the white-haired old man didn't attack again, and he just gazed coldly at Yang Yi. "Is that all you've got?" Yang Yi wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth, and then he gazed at the old man. "Bring it on." Yang Ye's figure transformed into a ray of light that vanished on the spot. The Sword of Rebirth. The Sword of Rebirth enhanced by Slaughter Sword intent. The ray of light was like a bolt of lightning that instantly arrived before the white-haired old man, and a long spatial rift was left behind in its wake. The space throughout its part had been torn open. The white-haired old man's eyes narrowed slightly, and he clenched his right fist. At the instant he fully clenched his fist, a vortex suddenly appeared on his fist, and then he slammed his fist forward. Boom! A powerful tornado enveloped the ray of light that Yang Yi had transformed into. Rumble! Rumbling resounded incessantly while the space in a huge area started to tremble violently. The other Zenith Realm experts had extremely solemn expressions on their faces as they watched the battle. Obviously, they hadn't expected that Yang Yi could actually go head-on against an elder of the Discipline Hall. After all, those able to assume the position of elder in the Discipline Hall had attained the Zenith Realm a few hundred years ago. Even though such experts hadn't surpassed the Zenith Realm, their strength was absolutely not something an ordinary Zenith Realm expert could resist. Yet now, this young master who was just at the Rebirth Realm was actually able to go head-on against an expert who'd attained the Zenith Realm a few hundred years ago. At this moment, all of them started to become curious about Yang Ye's identity. Meanwhile, the battle was still going on. Rays of sword energy and energy fists were flashing incessantly through the surroundings. Every collision caused space to tremble violently. The space here was actually on the verge of shattering, but the white-haired old man instantly repaired it. So, Yang Yi couldn't utilize a black hole to deal with the white-haired old man. Even though the white-haired old man hadn't been able to save Yang Kong, he knew how Yang Kong had died. Because his divine sense had been able to view the battle between Yang Yi and Yang Kong, and it was just his body that got here a bit too late. Even though Yang Kong was weaker than him, Yang Kong wasn't much weaker than him. So, if he allowed Yang Yi to create a black hole here, then even he would probably be unable to endure Yang Ye's attacks. So, every single time space was about to collapse, the white-haired old man would immediately repair it. So long as no black holes were created, then it wouldn't be a huge problem for him. The might of Yang Ye's laws of darkness depended upon the size of a black hole. The larger the black hole, the more dark matter and dark energy he would be able to gain control of, and so it would be stronger. In the beginning, Yang Yi had intended to utilize a black hole to deal with the white-haired old man. Unfortunately, the white-haired old man didn't give him a chance to do that. Every single time he was about to shatter space, the old man would immediately repair the space there, causing the battle to feel extremely depressing to Yang Yi. As they fought and fought, Yang Yi was gradually at a disadvantage. Or it should be said that he was gradually being suppressed. However, it was normal. After all, the old man's strength and cultivation far surpassed Yang Yi. Bang! Meanwhile, an explosion resounded abruptly, and then a figure was blasted away. It was Yang Yi. This time, the white-haired old man didn't follow up with another attack, and he just locked onto Yang Yi with his aura and said, "Your strength is all right, but you want to challenge my discipline hall with just that little bit of strength? How laughable!" Yang Yi glanced at the white-haired old man and fell silent. Meanwhile, the white-haired old man added, "However, I'm really quite curious, because amongst the young masters I know of, none of them possess slaughter intent, sword intent, and the laws of darkness. I really want to know which one of the 9 young masters you are." He glanced indifferently at Yang Yi at this point, and then he continued, "Will you remove that black robe yourself, or should I help you take it off?" Suddenly, Yang Yi raised his sword and light flickered on its blade. At the same time, a wave of terrifying intent surged out like a torrent from within him. However, it didn't take long for the intent to surge into the sword precursor. The white-haired old man's face turned cold when he witnessed this. He slowly clenched his right fist, and a vortex flickered on it. Even though they hadn't launched their attacks, the space in a huge area around them had started to tremble violently. The other Zenith Realm experts were visibly shocked, because it was obvious that Yang Yi was about to execute a powerful move. Meanwhile, Yang Ye's aura was growing stronger and stronger. When it arrived at its peak, Yang Yi suddenly moved. He turned around, drew his sword, and swung it. The space in front of him was instantly sliced open, and then he leaped into the spatial rift. He'd fled. Everyone here was stunned by this scene. He fled? All of them couldn't really wrap their heads around what had just happened. After all, just a moment ago, Yang Yi seemed like he intended to fight to the death. Yet now he'd fled. The white-haired old man's face was extremely unsightly. He felt like he'd been played. So, he didn't say a word and just vanished on the spot. The other Zenith Realm experts here intended to follow the white-haired old man. But the old man's voice suddenly came from afar. "I alone am enough. Go investigate the 9 young masters. Re-investigate all of them." The other Zenith Realm experts hesitated for a moment, and then they turned around and vanished on the spot. Just as the white-haired old man had said, they urgently desired to find out who Yang Yi was. Flee! Yang Yi naturally chose to flee. He was no fool. Fighting the white-haired old man to the death was utterly meaningless to him. His objective was Yang Yen. Moreover, besides the white-haired old man, there were 4 other Zenith Realm experts there. So, it didn't matter who won in their battle because he wouldn't be able to gain anything in the end. Under such circumstances, he naturally had to flee. In any case, the white-haired old man and the others didn't know who he was. Unfortunately, he'd underestimated the white-haired old man's speed and strength. Around 10 minutes later, Yang Yi stopped fleeing because the white-haired old man had appeared not too far away from him. At the same time, A powerful aura instantly sealed off the space in an area of 3 kilometers. Fleeing. The white-haired old man laughed with ridicule. Weren't you very arrogant earlier? Didn't you want to be the first to challenge my discipline hall? What? You're going to flee now? Xianxia remained silent for a moment, and then he said, Old man, you came alone? The white-haired old man spoke indifferently. Am I not enough? You're alone. Xianxia nodded and continued. Then I won't hold back. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his right hand and a blood puppet appeared both in front and behind the old man. The white-haired old man's face instantly became extremely unsightly when he saw the blood puppets. The old man stared at Xianxia. I thought you would fight me one-on-one. One-on-one. Xianxia shook his head. You must be dreaming. I'd fight you one-on-one if I stand a chance. But if I don't, I choose to gang up on you. One-on-one. Xianxia had never considered that. At the very least, he'd never considered fighting the white-haired old man in single combat. One-on-one battles depended upon the opponent he faced. If he clearly was no match for his opponent yet still insisted on a one-on-one battle, then wouldn't he be courting death? Xianxia was about to attack when the white-haired old man suddenly said, There are a total of 9 young masters participating in our Yang clan's fight for the position of successor. Even though I don't really know them well, I still know a little about all of them. But I'm sure that you aren't any one of them. Xianxia's eyes narrowed slightly. What are you trying to say? The white-haired old man looked Xianxia in the eyes. I suspect you aren't from the Yang clan. At this moment, Xianxia was using the sword domain to conceal his aura, so the old man couldn't sense his bloodline at all. Xianxia replied, Does it make a difference? The white-haired old man laughed coldly. Of course. If you belong to the Yang clan, then the fact that you killed Yang Danqing and Yang Kong will be an internal matter of our Yang clan, and we'll use our own internal methods to deal with it. But if you aren't from the Yang clan, then it isn't internal anymore. Do you know what's the consequence for an outsider who kills a member of our Yang clan? The old man paused for a moment at this point and continued, I know you definitely have other trump cards, but allow me to guarantee that if you aren't from the Yang clan, then you won't be able to see tomorrow's sunrise. Xianxia fell silent for a moment, and then he flicked a droplet of blood over to the white-haired old man. He didn't want to become enemies with the entire Yang clan right now. He wasn't that stupid. If he openly went against the Yang clan, then not to mention killing Yang Yen and recusing Little Sky, even survival would be a problem for him. The white-haired old man gazed at the pearl of blood for a long time before he said, You belong to the Yang clan. Xianxia said, and the old man gazed at him. Even though I don't know which young master you are, I'm certain that I'll find out very soon. Kid, just you wait. The discipline hall will come for you. As soon as he finished speaking, his body gradually became ethereal. Xianxia didn't do anything because the old man was gone. The old man naturally chose to leave. Even though he was strong, Xianxia and 2 blood puppets weren't something that he could fight again. If he allowed the fight to continue, then he may lose his life here. So he'd decisively chosen to leave. Xianxia didn't chase after the old man. If an expert like the white-haired old man chose to leave, then he could do nothing about it. Moreover, he didn't want to make things irreconcilable. Killing the white-haired old man would be a little too much. It wasn't necessary to fight the discipline hall to the death. It wasn't worth it. Xianxia fell silent for a short while and was about to leave. However, he suddenly looked towards the right. Show yourself. A moment of silence ensued, and it didn't take long for the space there to ripple. After that, Xianxia appeared not too far away from him. Xianxia said, You really are alive. Xianxia spoke indifferently. I had good luck. Xianxia glanced at Xianxia and said, Let's talk about that later. Come back with me. We have many more things to do. Xianxia was puzzled. We do, she replied. Do you know what the fight for succession represents? Simply speaking, it's like the fight for the throne in the mortal world. Perhaps the losing side won't be annihilated in our Yang clan, but the losing side will definitely be pushed far away from the center of authority. As for the winning side, they won't just possess supreme authority in the clan. The others who follow them will enjoy status and wealth too. Xianxia asked, What are you trying to say? Xianxia replied, being the successor has its benefits. What benefits? Let's skip the future benefits for now. So long as you become the successor, you'll gain priority access to all the resources of the Yang clan. Cultivation techniques, combat techniques, weapons. So long as the Yang clan has them, you can have them. Because you'll be fostered to be the next patriarch. Simply speaking, so long as you become the successor, the gap between you and the other young masters will grow larger and larger. She paused for a moment and continued, you won't be the only one who benefits. Everyone who stands by your side will be on the priority list to be fostered. If you become the successor, then I'll definitely advance a step further and obtain even more authority. Yang Yi nodded. I understand. It was as they say, when one attains success, everyone around him benefits. Xianxia nodded. Come. There are two people who want to meet you. Yang Yi asked. Who? Xianxia remained silent for an instant and replied. Your father's old subordinates and 2 of the current 7 marshals. Be respectful. As soon as she finished speaking, she vanished on the spot. Yang Yi fell silent for a moment, and then he followed her. She knew Yang Yi didn't know much about the Yang clan, so Xianxia ceaselessly told him about the Yang clan while they traveled. Yang Yi gradually gained a rough understanding of the Yang clan. The patriarch was naturally the one with the greatest authority in the Yang clan. The patriarch's name was Yang Wutian. He was the strongest expert in the Yang clan, and one of the strongest experts in the medium universe of Milky Way system. Right below him was the Council of Elders. The Council of Elders was made up by the experts of the main and branch families of the Yang clan. All of them were top-rate experts, and their status in the Yang clan was merely inferior to the patriarch. Besides that, the Council of Elders had another right, and it was to impeach the patriarch. If the patriarch tried to do something that harmed the interests of the clan, the Council of Elders could remove the patriarch from his position. Of course, the precondition was that over 80% of the elders agreed. Beneath the Council of Elders was the Discipline Hall, and it was formed from the elites of the Yang clan. As they say, a kingdom had its laws and a family had its rules. The Yang clan has its own rules, and there were numerous rules. However, it wasn't easy to make people abide by those rules. So, the Discipline Hall was born. The Discipline Hall was authorized to kill before questioning when dealing with those who broke the rules. So, the Discipline Hall's authority in the Yang clan was huge. Below the Discipline Hall were the 7 marshals. They controlled 70% of the Yang clan's forces, and they guarded the various worlds belonging to the Yang clan. The 7 marshals only obeyed the patriarch's orders, and both the Council of Elders and Discipline Hall had no authority over them. Further below the 7 marshals were the 72 warriors. They were the central strength of the Yang clan because one had to be at the Zenith realm at least to be ranked amongst them, and it was impossible for an ordinary Zenith realm expert to be ranked amongst them as well. Besides the 72 warriors, there were the 4 armies. The Immortal Phoenix Army, the Dragon God Guard, the Black Turtle Army, and the Tiger Fang Camp. Xianxia was the commander of the Immortal Phoenix Army. The main mission of the 4 armies and 72 warriors was to protect the Yang clan's headquarters, Heaven Void Continent. Besides that, there was one other army. It was the most mysterious army of the Yang clan. However, only the patriarchs knew about it. It didn't take long for Yang Yi and Xianxia to arrive at Fecta City. The Immortal Phoenix Pavilion. Xianxia led Yang Yi to an underground cultivation room in the Immortal Phoenix Pavilion. There was a man and a woman in the room. The man seemed to be a little over 30 years of age. He wore a luxurious robe, had his hands behind his back, a square-shaped face, a hardened appearance, and an extremely calm gaze. As for the woman by the man's side, Yang Yi couldn't see her appearance because it was covered by a veil. Even though her face was concealed, her curvaceous figure was extremely hot. Yang Yi instantly revealed an extremely solemn expression on his face when he saw them, because they actually felt unfathomable to him. They were even stronger than the white-haired old man from the Discipline Hall. That was his intuition. Experts above the Zenith realm? When Yang Yi walked in, the middle-aged man and woman had immediately gazed at him. A short while passed before the middle-aged man suddenly said, The sword domain? Yang Yi nodded. The middle-aged man nodded slightly. Attack! Attack! Yang Yi was slightly stunned, and then he understood what the man meant. The middle-aged man wanted to see his strength. A moment of silence ensued, and then Yang Yi vanished on the spot. He was in front of the middle-aged man when he appeared again, and then he stabbed his sword forward. The middle-aged man's expression was calm as he tapped his finger against the tip of Yang Ye's sword. OM! Bang! The sword shook violently, and then a huge wave of force blasted Yang Yi 3 kilometers back. Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly. The middle-aged man's strength wasn't just slightly superior to the white-haired old man, it was far superior. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man added, "Be more serious." Yang Yi nodded slightly. A moment later, his figure transformed into a ray of light that vanished on the spot. At the same time, a ray of sword energy flashed forward. Space was instantly torn into pieces by it, and a very long spatial rift appeared here. The sword energy carried Yang Ye's slaughter sword intent as it arrived before the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man's expression remained calm, and he suddenly tapped his finger forward when the sword energy was just a few dozen centimeters away from him. Bang! Yang Ye's sword energy was instantly blasted into bits. However, the middle-aged man's eyes suddenly narrowed, because Yang Yi had suddenly appeared behind him. At the same time, the tip of Yang Ye's sword had arrived before his back. Hiss! The sword shot through him, but Yang Yi was shocked instead, because the middle-aged man was 3 kilometers away. The beautiful woman glanced at Yang Yi, and there was a trace of surprise in her eyes, because the middle-aged man's back had a cut. It wasn't very deep, and it was just around 2 centimeters deep. The middle-aged man glanced at Yang Yi and said, "Your laws of darkness are quite different. You're actually able to move so soundlessly. Ordinary Zenith Realm experts won't be able to defend themselves against that attack." Yang Yi shook his head. "Unfortunately, you did. Are we still going to continue?" The middle-aged man shook his head slightly. "It isn't necessary anymore." Meanwhile, the beautiful woman suddenly said, "Try a move of mine, all right?" Yang Yi gazed at her. He was about to speak when she suddenly appeared before him. After that, her eyes suddenly started to spin strangely. In an instant, Yang Ye's eyes became blank, and then he seemed to have been petrified on the spot. The woman took 2 steps back and spoke indifferently. "It's done." The middle-aged man said, "He possesses the enlightened sword heart." She replied, "His cultivation is too low. Even the enlightened sword heart is useless. If you don't believe me, just watch." As she spoke, she flicked a strand of energy towards Yang Ye's chest. Hiss! A string of blood sprayed from Yang Ye's chest. However, Yang Ye's eyes were still blank, and he didn't react at all. "Be careful. Don't destroy his mind." Suddenly, a black shadow appeared from a distant corner. "A brain-dead person is useless to us." Xianxia, the middle-aged man, and the beautiful woman immediately bowed slightly when they saw the black shadow. The black shadow was hidden in the corner like a part of the shadow there, and it was impossible to see its appearance. The beautiful woman bowed slightly to the black shadow and said, "Don't worry. I know how far to go." The black shadow fell silent for an instant and said, "He's proud and unyielding. It's impossible to make him willingly be a puppet." The beautiful woman nodded. "Then why don't we kill him now?" The black shadow shook its head. "No. Since he can't be a puppet, we'll just change the plan. All of you can't kill the other young masters, and neither can I. However, he can kill them openly." The beautiful woman hesitated for a moment and said, "I understand your intentions. However, regardless of whether it's his strength or natural talent, they're both not bad. If he's allowed to grow, I'm afraid..." "It's fine," the black shadow continued. "If it's in terms of natural talent and potential, he's nothing to me. All of you will support him from now on and allow him to do as he pleases. Understand?" "Yes." All 3 of them quickly nodded. Meanwhile, the black shadow asked, "Xianxia, are you sure that your brother's old treasure is in his possession?" Xianxia nodded. "It should be. Otherwise, It would be impossible for him to grow to such an extent while at such a low-level world. She paused for a moment and continued, "Does Master want it?" "I'm slightly curious." The Black Shadow continued, "However, it isn't necessary to take it from him right now. Leave it with him for now." The Black Shadow pondered deeply for a moment before continuing, "Is your brother dead or alive?" Xianxia shook her head. "I don't know." "What a pity." The Black Shadow continued, "Throughout the history of our Yang clan, only the ancestor and your brother were extraordinary. The rest, and especially the current young masters, a bunch of trash. Those stubborn old fellows in the Council of Elders are too pedantic too. The day will come when I send all of them to hell." Xianxia and the others lowered their heads and didn't dare to say anything. Meanwhile, the Black Shadow added, "He's still quite weak. Be careful. Don't let him get killed. Especially from Yang Kong's side of the clan. They will definitely not let the matter rest. I heard that Yang Kong's father, Yang Su, has rushed back from outside our system. So, don't let him leave during this time." As soon as he finished speaking, the Black Shadow shook and vanished on the spot. Once the Black Shadow vanished, the beautiful woman went over to Yang Yi. She waved her hand and a ray of pink light flashed. Yang Ye's body shuddered, and then his gaze gradually cleared up. A short while passed before Yang Yi shook his head, and then he glanced at them. "What happened?" The beautiful woman gazed at Yang Yi for a long time before she said, "Nothing. I was just testing your mental state. It's still quite lacking. Remember to temper it more." She moved aside once she finished speaking. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man said, "I'm Gu Xiu, and she's Qian Hu. We used to be your father's subordinates. Now that you're back to fight for the position of successor, we'll help you with that." Yang Yi quickly cupped his fist. "Thank you." Gu Xiu nodded. "We've obtained news that Yang Kong's father, Yang Su, has rushed back from outside our system. He's extremely strong and absolutely isn't someone you can fight. Besides Yang Su, the Discipline Hall is looking for you too. So, don't leave this place for now. They won't be able to openly attack you once the fight for succession begins." Yang Yi replied, "Understood. I won't cause any trouble during this time. However, I need the location of a person." Gu Xiu asked, "Yang Yan?" Yang Yi nodded. "Exactly." Gu Xiu fell silent for a short while and replied, "You aren't able to kill him right now." Yang Yi asked, "Is he very strong?" Gu Xiu shook his head slightly. "If it's in terms of strength, he's probably inferior to you. However, because you've killed Yang Danqing, the Discipline Hall has started to focus its attention on protecting the young masters. With the experts of the Discipline Hall there to protect him, it'll be very difficult for you to kill him. Moreover, Yang Yan isn't weak either. Coupled with the fact that his grandfather is back, it's utterly impossible for you to kill him right now. Understand?" Yang Yi fell silent for a moment, and then he asked, "Why isn't the Discipline Hall protecting me too?" Gu Xiu's eyelids twitched. "You should be happy if they don't look for trouble with you." Yang Yi was speechless. Meanwhile, Gu Xiu added, "Once the fight for succession begins, we won't be able to help you. At that time, you'll have to rely on yourself. So, seize this opportunity to work hard on growing stronger." Yang Yi nodded. "I'm sure you're all aware that I've been living far away since I was young. Regardless of whether it was techniques or treasures, everything in that world was quite ordinary. But those young masters of the Yang clan definitely possess the best techniques and treasures. So, Gu Xiu shook his head. "We don't have sword techniques. As for treasures, I don't have any good swords too." Yang Yi hurriedly said, "Other things are all right too." Gu Xiu was stunned speechless. Xianxia and the beautiful woman had strange expressions on their faces, because they felt that Yang Ye's skin was a little too thick. Gu Xiu hesitated for a moment, and then he flipped his palm. A black shoe appeared before Yang Yi. Flash boots. They give you the ability to instantly move 3 kilometers. The instant here is a tenth of a breath of time. I relied on these boots to avoid your attack earlier. The beautiful woman glanced at Gu Xiu and seemed to want to say something, but she hesitated for a moment and didn't say anything in the end. Yang Ye's eyes lit up when he heard this. What did he need the most right now? Speed. If he had these boots and coupled with the speed he had, he could practically instantly kill a Zenith Realm expert before that Zenith Realm expert had the chance to react. Suddenly, Wuxia said, however, it can only be used once a day. Yang Yi was slightly stunned. He asked, why? Wuxia said, these boots exhaust a huge amount of profound energy. Even my profound energy isn't sufficient for a single usage. So, I usually store profound energy within it so that I can use it at the critical moment. Yang Yi nodded. I understand. Right, what rank is it at? Wuxia replied, the Zenith rank. Treasures above those that surpass the normal ranks of quality are known as Zenith rank treasures. It means they've reached the Zenith just like Zenith Realm experts. As for the difference between Rebirth Realm and Zenith Realm experts have reached their own limits in all aspects. One is said to be at the zenith upon arriving at one's limit. It's the same for treasures and techniques. Besides that, if the laws of darkness you just used is treated as a technique, then it'll be at the zenith rank too. Because your laws of darkness has arrived at the zenith of your own potential. Zenith. Yang Yi nodded slightly and said, even intents are said to be at the zenith rank upon reaching their limits? Wuxia nodded. If your sword intent and slaughter intent rise a level higher, they'll be at the zenith rank. However, it's quite difficult to accomplish that. Anyway, it's very rare for someone to attain the zenith rank in a type of intent. Yang Yi asked, what's above the zenith rank? Wuxia fell silent for a long time, and then he said, you'll find out in the future. Yang Yi glanced at Wuxia and nodded. After that, he gazed at Xianxia. Can I have a private cultivation room? Xianxia nodded. Come with me. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. Yang Yi cupped his fist to Wuxia and Qian who, farewell. After Yang Yi and Xianxia left, the beautiful woman suddenly said, wow, if I'm not wrong, that's the only zenith rank treasure you have, right? Wuxia spoke indifferently. If you want a horse to run, you must feed it grass, right? Moreover, we should have a failsafe just in case, right? She was visibly surprised. You did something to those boots? Wuxia spoke indifferently. What do you think? She glanced at him. You seem so reticent, but you're actually quite sneaky. Wuxia glanced at her. You too. In an underground cultivation room, Yang Yi glanced at the surroundings, and then he entered the primordial pagoda. Yang Ye's gaze was icy cold, and the intent to kill flickered within his eyes. He'd heard everything they said, of course. That beautiful woman's technique was powerful indeed, but she'd far underestimated him. He didn't just possess the enlightened sword heart. He had Xianxia, the divine inflame, and the primordial pagoda within him. So, how could she possibly affect his consciousness? He knew Xianxia didn't have good intentions when she made him return to the Yang clan. Sure enough, she was using him. Moreover, she was planning to take the primordial pagoda from him as well. Fortunately, both Xianxia and the mysterious figure didn't know that the treasure within him was the primordial pagoda, and they just knew he had a treasure. If they knew that it was the primordial pagoda, or it should be said that if they knew how heaven-defying the primordial pagoda was, then he would have been in great danger just now. Because that mysterious figure felt extraordinarily dangerous to him. Trying to use me? A cold smile curled up on the corners of Yang Ye's mouth. Dream on. He looked down at the boots in his grasp, fell silent for an instant, and then laughed coldly. You're trying to play tricks with me? Let's see who tricks who. As soon as he finished speaking, he issued a command in his heart, and the boots instantly appeared on his feet. The profound energy within him surged madly into the boots. Once all of his profound energy had surged into it, he issued another command in his heart. A moment later, Yang Ye's figure vanished on the spot. In an instant, over 10,000 images of Yang Yi had appeared in the surroundings. Besides Yang Ye's actual body, the rest were afterimages, of course. However, they seemed real. It was because he was exceedingly swift. Exceedingly swift. Yang Yi finally understood how powerful zenith rank treasures were. because his speed had really been at his limits just now. Could be said that if he activated the boots, then ordinary Zenith Realm experts couldn't compete with his speed. Experts able to attain the Zenith Realm represented that they'd attained the limits of their ability in all aspects. However, there were differences in strength between Zenith Realm experts. So what did that represent? It represented that not all Zenith Realm experts were truly at the zenith. It meant that not all of them had truly reached their limits. It was like two tigers. If one grew up in the forest but the other grew up in captivity, then while they were both tigers, which one would win in a one-on-one battle? The answer was obvious. The boots clearly were at the true zenith. So, unless he encountered one of those Zenith Realm experts who had attained the true extremes of their ability, he could fully surpass the speed of all other Zenith Realm experts. The only sad part was that he could only gain such speed once a day. However, he was satisfied, because it could play a decisive role at the critical moment or even save his life. Xianxia knew that Wuxia had done something to the boots, but he didn't do anything to it because he didn't want to alarm Wuxia. Since they wanted to use him, then he could use them as well. After he recovered his profound energy, Xianxia went to see Snowy and Zier. At this moment, Snowy was flying around while holding onto the wooden sword. As for Zier, she was cultivating. Regardless of whether it was Zier, Xiao Yushi, Zhuang Weiran, Su Qingshi, or the others, all of them were working hard on their cultivation. Perhaps they couldn't help Xianxia, but if they didn't cultivate, then they would definitely be unable to stay by Xianxia's side for too long. Lifespan. They weren't the only ones. It was the same for everyone else in the world. If they didn't want to die, then they had to work hard on cultivating and attain a higher realm of cultivation in order to gain more lifespan. Snowy waved her claw when she saw Xianxia, and the wooden sword instantly brought her over to Xianxia. After that, she flashed over to Xianxia, and then she wrapped her claws around Xianxia's face and rubbed her head against his cheek. Xianxia rubbed Snowy's head gently, and then he gazed at the wooden sword that was floating not too far away from him. As if it noticed his gaze, the wooden sword shook abruptly, and light flickered on it. Xianxia's eyelids twitched at the sight of this, and he quickly made his profound energy surge. Meanwhile, Snowy appeared on the wooden sword, and she patted it gently with both claws. It didn't take long for the wooden sword to calm down slowly. Xianxia glanced at it, and then he glanced at Snowy. Why is it so hostile towards me? He really couldn't figure out what was wrong with the wooden sword because it wanted to hit him on sight. Snowy flew over to Xianxia and started waving her claws about. It didn't take long for Xianxia's face to become quite unsightly, because Snowy said he had slaughter intent, and that was why the sword was hostile towards him. What the hell? Xianxia cursed in his heart. He's trying to be righteous. Xianxia glanced at the wooden sword and then he gazed at Snowy. Help me ask it why it chose to come with me if it hates me. Snowy blinked and flew over to the wooden sword. A short while passed before she flew over to Xianxia again, and then she started waving her claws again. A short while passed, and then Xianxia's face grew even more unsightly. He'd thought the wooden sword had come with him because of what he'd said that day, but that wasn't it at all. The reason it had left with him was because he had something that drew its attention. Obviously, it was the primordial pagoda. It had come with him because of the primordial pagoda and not him. Xianxia glanced at the wooden sword. He hadn't expected it to have actually been able to sense the primordial pagoda's presence. Where did this wooden sword come from? What rank of quality is it? It's definitely far above the zenith rank. Xianxia shook his head and restrained his thoughts. Thinking about all of that was pointless, and he didn't want to waste his time on the wooden sword. Even though his strength would rise tremendously if he could take control of the sword, the problem was that it would definitely not allow him to take control of it for now. He could use force on the demon beasts, but he didn't want to use force on the sword. Or it should be said that he wanted to use his own strength to subdue it and not rely on the primordial pagoda to accomplish that. Swords weren't like demon beasts. A good sword would rather break than bend. Xianxia played with Snowy for a while, and then he left and went to see Xianxia, who he hadn't seen for a long time. Kid, you've grown stronger again. These were the first words Xianxia said to Xianxia. Xianxia glanced at Xianxia. How much of your strength have you recovered? Xianxia replied, 90%. Yang Yi puckered his lips and said, Brother, don't blame me for being frank. You have recovered 90% of your strength, but as far as I'm concerned, your current strength is only equivalent to an ordinary Zenith Realm expert. So, even if you recover your full strength, you'll be equivalent to a Zenith Realm expert that has truly reached the Zenith in every aspect. It makes me wonder if the standard of experts in the large universe is low, or are you weak? Nonsense. Xianxia shouted angrily. What do you know? Do you know what recovering my full strength means? Yang Yi quickly asked. What does it mean? It means I can fucking utilize my divine ability. Xianxia spoke angrily. Every powerful demon beast has their own divine ability. Do you know what mine is? Yang Yi shook his head. I don't. Tell me. Let's see if it's powerful. Beast form. Xianxia continued angrily. My divine ability is beast form. After I transform, my body will grow more than 10 times larger. Besides that, my defense and speed will rise tremendously. At that time, trash like Zenith Realm experts wouldn't even be able to take a single slap of mine. Besides that, I have another divine ability. Yang Yi quickly asked, What is it? Xianxia grunted coldly. I'm not going to tell you. It's my trump card. I have to keep it a secret. If we become enemies, I wouldn't even have a trump card. I have to take some precautions against you. Yang Yi was stunned, and then he said, Xianxia, that hurts me quite a bit. Look, since the day we met, we can be considered to have gone through thick and thin together. So, just cut the crap. Xianxia waved his claw. You're extremely shameless. You might betray me at any moment. So, I have to take some precautions. Yang Yi was at a loss for words. Meanwhile, Xianxia continued, You didn't come here to talk. Tell me why you're here. Yang Yi nodded and said, I'm sure you're aware that the fight for succession is about to begin. So, I may need your help. Xianxia fell silent for a moment and said, Kid, you have to be careful. Even though the experts here can't compare to the experts of the large universe, they aren't weak. Even during my prime, I didn't dare to underestimate some of the experts here. For example, that fellow Wu Mu from the Wu clan. Even if he came to the large universe, he would definitely be an extraordinary figure. Yang Yi nodded and said, I know. I'm still quite weak, and that aunt of mine and those people standing behind her have ill intent towards me. So, brother, I'm in quite a dangerous situation. Xianxia glanced at Yang Yi and spoke indifferently. What does that have to do with me? Yang Yi didn't know what to say. Meanwhile, Xianxia added, Kid, you aren't really strong, but your ability to cause trouble is truly formidable. Let me warn you in advance. I'll run if the trouble you cause is too serious. Yang Yi laughed bitterly. Brother, you're the only one I can rely on. I'll be killed if even you run away. Xianxia spoke angrily. Don't act like you're so pitiable. You're extremely tenacious. You would still be alive even if I'm dead. Yang Yi was at a loss for words. Xianxia waved his claw. Every time I see you, I feel like I'm going to suffer from misfortune. Get away from me. Yang Ye's face was utterly dark. But when he thought about it, it did make sense. Xianxia really had almost died on many occasions because of him. Yang Yi felt quite guilty when he thought about this. And then he said, Brother Xianxia, I'm sorry. Staying with me really is. Xianxia suddenly said, Don't try to play the emotion card on me. Fuck off or I'll attack. Yang Yi felt speechless. Suddenly, Yang Ye's expression changed, and then he vanished on the spot and arrived in the outside world. As soon as he arrived in the outside world, Yang Xian appeared before him. Yang Yi asked, What is it? Yang Xian spoke in a low voice. Yang Yan and the others are aware of your identity. Yang Ye's eyes narrowed. How did they find out? Yang Xian shook her head. I don't know. Yang Yi spoke indifferently. If they know, then they know. Yang Xian hesitated for a moment and said, There's one more thing. Yang Yi asked, What? Yang Xian fell silent for a moment and said, You have to stay calm. All right? Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly while a bad feeling arose in his heart. Meanwhile, Yang Xian said, Yang Yan has hung Little Sky's soul outside Fecta City. He said that he'll dismember her to death if you don't show yourself. Yang Yi looked Yang Xian in the eye for a long time, and then he turned around and left. Suddenly, Yang Xian obstructed Yang Ye's path. Don't be rash. They're drawing you out on purpose. Many experts are definitely lying in ambush outside the city. If you do, they'll definitely annihilate you. So, give priority to the overall situation. As soon as she finished speaking, she waved her right hand and 5 Zenith Realm experts instantly appeared around Yang Yi. Yang Yi walked over to Yang Xian. Move aside. Yang Xian looked him in the eye. No,